Carpenter. I'm a pastor of the Word and Table service here at Nall. And I first came to Nall in October of 2016, right after my wife and I moved here for me to start seminary. And we were given a list of probably 6 to 10 different churches in Kansas City to go check out. And Nall was on that list. And one of the reasons that we actually got interested in Nall was because of the Word and Table service that was already happening on Saturday nights with my predecessor, Ross Norris. We had been attending a Word and Table service back in Nampa, Idaho, that was incredibly formative, very rich and sustaining for us where we were in ministry. And that was something that was really important to both of us, actually. And so we made it kind of a point to try to find a place that had more of a sacramental, liturgical style of worship. And at that time, Nall was the only church, the only Nazarene church on the district that had a Word and Table service. And so we figured we'd come and give it a shot, and we loved Saturday night. It was a breath of fresh air and a beautiful place to come and to have that special time and focus for worship. And then we came on Sunday morning and we found a Sunday school class that we really loved, and we just really clicked with the other staff, a lot of the parishioners, and slowly but surely it just kind of was like, okay, I guess this is our home now. So in July of 2017, Ross called me and said that he was planning on leaving to move back to be with family, and that he and Steve had talked about me taking his place, which I was incredibly humbled and honored to have that conversation in the first place. But I'd been trying to find a ministry position ever since we had moved here, and there was just nothing. And so when that opportunity came up, I jumped at it, and I was totally excited, super on board, and just ready to begin this new chapter. 3 weeks after I got that phone call, Mariah had been having some very serious mental health difficulties for some time. I mean, she had struggled with depression and anxiety for most of her life, but things were getting exponentially difficult at this point. And it was that first week of August. It was actually August 5th, the last Saturday that Ross was with us, and I was going to take over the next Saturday, that she began to become significantly suicidal. And it was that day where I had tried to help. I had done everything I could, and I didn't know what else to do. And so I took her to the hospital, to the emergency room. And after some hours of evaluation, they had determined that she was definitely in a suicidal ideation, actively suicidal, and was moved to the psychiatric unit at the hospital. And I went home that night alone and just totally worn out from the stress of trying to keep her well, keep her alive for a few days, and also thinking, how am I supposed to, begin this next chapter of school, take up this ministry position, when my wife is so sick in this way. And it was just overwhelming, to put it lightly. And that was the first hospitalization. Over the next 3 or so years, there would be 6 others. Some more dramatic and more terrifying, some not so much, but 6 more times she was hospitalized because of massive depression and anxiety that was making her suicidal. And so all throughout that journey, I'm trying to go to school. to be a pastor. I'm trying to be a good and faithful minister here at Nall. And I'm trying to keep my wife healthy and safe and alive. And it was a lot. In many respects, it was just too much. And that's where Nall came in, was I had people always saying, how can we love you? How can we take care of you? I never, ever had to question if I was alone, if I was gonna be okay. I knew that I was being taken care of. There were still a lot of struggles. There were still a lot of hurts and frustrations, difficulties that I had to come over myself personally. There was also a lot of wrestling with God and with prayer about not just why is this happening, but what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to keep going? What does it mean to be faithful? What does it mean to be like Jesus in the midst of this chaos and this brokenness? And Nall was always a place that I could come, and even as I'm, leading Sunday school class, even as I'm leading people in worship on Saturday nights, to be able to express that frustration, that grief, that hurt, and then be met with grace, and to receive, as we like to say on Saturday nights, the peace of Christ that only Christ can offer us. And so that came through with people buying us groceries, with people taking me out to meals, people just calling and texting and saying, we love you, you're gonna be okay. And if Mariah needs anything, also, we're here for both of you, individually and as a couple. And that was something that kept us here at Nall, was just the fact that in the darkest moments of my life, I knew I had a community that was rallying around us in prayer and in love, and holding us in hope when we ourselves could not hope. There were some circumstances, some situations that happened at the beginning of this year that finally pushed my marriage to the point of, this is no longer healthy, this is no longer good, this is no longer the covenant that Mariah and I made before God and before the church. And we had put in so much time and energy and effort into keeping things good, and it just wasn't happening. And so it finally got to the point where we felt that the most healthy, the most beneficial thing for both of us was to dissolve our marriage. And that was not an easy decision. That was not a desired decision, but it was one that we felt like was what was healthiest and what was best for both of us. And one of the things that has come out of that was, in my thinking, in my wrestling, in my questioning of God, recognizing that part of what this path of walking with Jesus, part of what it means to be a Christian, is to have a life that is devoted to faithfulness, to be committed, to say, I'm in this, Jesus. I'm with you stride for stride, step for step, in all of the hurts and all of the pains and all of the beauty and all of the glory, in everything. And to think that even though my marriage failed in a lot of ways, God has been faithful, and that I am called to also be faithful, to do the best I can with what I have, to live into the grace that God is lavishly pouring out to me, and not to say, oh, well, you accomplished this thing, so you're a success, or, well, you failed at this thing, so you're a failure. But to determine whether I, quote unquote, succeed or not based on, well, have I been faithful as God has been faithful to me? And once again, through all of the circumstances of these past few years, God has shown that God is faithful in everything, in every step of the way, even in the tiny little things to the humongous things. God is faithful, and that I am called to be faithful as well. And so, one of the ways my Christian walk and even the way I pastor has been different is not to have this kind of checklist of successes and failures, of accomplishments and production, but rather to say, am I being faithful to what God has called me and to the things that God has given me? And so even in the midst of great tragedy and brokenness that has happened, I can say, I have done everything to the best of my ability by the grace of God, and I have been faithful because God has first been faithful to me. And to be able to speak honestly and openly about that, to have a community such as Nall to practice that and live that out, has been an immense blessing, and one for which not only am I eternally grateful, but I don't know that I would be here right now without that community to be open and honest with, to practice faithfulness with, and to wrestle with all of this with. You don't have to be afraid to admit your own brokenness and your own weakness, because you're not alone in this, and because there is always grace, especially in the form of this loving community, to rally around, to lift you up, and to fill in those cracks and say, even in this darkness, even in this broken, messed up place, there is grace and there is redemption that is possible. And that's been absolutely life-changing for me.